I'm Rob Hearn. I'm managing editor for Steel Media. I think the most interesting thing that I came across this year was I've just come back from G-Star in Korea, which was fascinating, just to get a glimpse at a different market. The big contrasts between there and the West were VR. There's a lot of difference there actually. A lot of times when you speak to people in the West, developers from the West, they're very kind of gung-ho about VR. People are investing a lot in VR. They're taking on people to make games for VR. In Korea, it wasn't really like that at all. They sort of, I mean, I don't know whether they're wiser or they're just a couple of years behind, but there was definitely less interest in VR. I met a few developers who were making really interesting things, and there was a sense of exasperation about how difficult it was in their market compared to markets in the West, where people are very, very excited about it. Just generally, I thought G-Star was a great show. It was really different to see a completely different environment. It was interesting to see developers in the East making games that for a Western market, and sometimes not quite getting it. So sometimes there was a kind of a tin-eared attempt to create things that they thought would appeal to people in the West, like mafia-related games and stuff, which just weren't quite right. But then at the same time, there was an indie booth at G-Star called the Big Showcase, which contained games made by Korean developers, predominantly, not entirely, but predominantly. And what I found there, which was very interesting, is that there was very much a consistency consistentness between the games that were there and the games that you would see at an indie game stand at a Western show. There was just this, indie games have this kind of like artsy sensibility quite often. They're quite experimental, and actually the games that I saw at the indie game showcase at G-Star were exactly the same kind of games that I would expect to see at a Western show like E3 or Gamescom. So it was interesting to see that there was this kind of universality of almost kind of artistic vision in terms of game making for mobile or otherwise, contrasting with this kind of business-like approach to making games, for Western audiences, which in some cases didn't quite get what would appeal. So yeah, it was very interesting. G-Star was a fascinating show, and Korea is a lovely country.